Hello. In this video I'm going to be going through a short demo on how you can use API to make calls to Management Center to create API keys for your API users and then use that API key to manage objects that reside on Management Center. First off, I would like to point out that all the documentation for the API for Management Center actually resides on the Management Center. You just have to go to the path of help-API, and all of the endpoints are listed here with some examples as well. What the methods are supported, what the endpoints are, what the JSON contents are, what the responses are, and so on and so on. You can always use these calls in browser as well. For example, if you want to see all of the policies on the Management Center, you just do API policies and you get them all listed in this JSON file. Okay, let's jump to Management Center. Let's close this down. We don't need that. Right. First of all, part of this demo is to show you how you can use accounts that are not managed on Management Center as well. So we're going to go into users. This is the default user that Management Center comes with, so we ignore that one, and there's two more here. The fact that there's that little black arrow here means that these were actually synced into Management Center, and they were synced or they were created during the Radius authentication process. So I didn't create them here in the Management Center. They actually reside in my AD on my domain controller, and I've got, these are the two users. I've got the API key manager. This is the user that's going to be used to manage, rotate, and create API keys for other API users. In my demo, there is only one API user, and that user is the API_user. I would also like to point out that, as you can see, this account is actually disabled right now. It is still going to work, providing that you have already logged on to Management Center at least once, during which process the Radius would have created that user on Management Center. The account can be then disabled in AD if you want it to be disabled. So those are the two users. Just quickly point out that here is my Radius. Let's go to settings and Radius. That's my Radius server on the default ports, and my Radius secret, and I have got Management Center configured as a Radius client here. This one right here in the middle. And the policy that I have just says that if the user is in a domain admin group, give it a read-write access to Management Center. Well, that's actually that's incorrect. I don't have the role synced with the group, so it doesn't give it read-write access. It just gives it access granted on Radius. The role, whether it is read-write or read-only, is actually defined on Management Center. So all that Radius will do, it will come back to the Management Center with request was accepted, and at that point the user gets created if it is the first time, and then the role is actually taken from Management Center from the role section. So I created this API key manager role and API policy manager. So the API key manager has got two permissions. It has got the add for REST API, and it has got the update for user. It needs, this is the minimum that it needs to create a new API key for a user. And if I go back quickly to the user, this API manager has got that rule assigned right here, API key manager, and my API user has got assigned the API policy manager. The API policy manager is defined like this. It has got policy object set to edit content, edit metadata, and view. And I have further locked this role for that API underscore user only to a single shared object on the management center. You don't need to do that. You could open it to all, but I just wanted to show that it is possible. You can't lock it down to any specific policy. And in my case, it is this object called shared object category. And the other permission is for the REST API, again, to add, update, or view. And these three are tied to this object here. Okay, so let's now cancel this and let's jump into our API client. So this API client does 4 things. I'm gonna run it and then explain it. So what I am doing now, I am providing the username and password for the API key manager. I provided the credentials. The credentials got base64 encoded and attached as a value to the basic directive on the authorization header to management center. Because the role for the API key manager is locked and the API key manager password is managed on my AD and radius, I have mitigated anybody trying to abuse this user or the role to do something other than just create the API key for the user. And the password can be rotated as frequently as I want. In my lab, that's down to my domain controller, but of course, if that's integrated with CyberArk, then it will be managed by CyberArk. So let's just go here to the top. I made a call. I got 200 OK, bunch of HTTP headers, and the response body is my API key. It didn't actually come back like this. I had to write a little parser that then prints it out to the output here. I believe it comes back as a JSON file with multiple key value pairs. But all I'm interested in is this. I then make another call, this get policy call, and the get policy call just grabs all of the policies, but this time I am not authenticating with base64 basic directive authorization header. I'm authenticating using the XAuth token, and I am using this. Now, this will be the validity on this can be set. I did not set one, but as soon as I make another call with my API key manager for the API user, the old token is invalidated. And the response to this call, of course, is again bunch of HTTP headers, and the payload is a list. And in that list, I have got a single object. Well, no, I had multiple, as I showed you before, but again, I wrote a little parser that only look for the custom category one, because that's the one we are interested in. That's the one we are going to be editing via API call. And all I'm interested in here is to really get this UUID, because the next endpoint that we call is this endpoint. We again go to API policies. This time we don't want all the policies, we want a specific object, which is this object here based on the UUID. And we are not interested in any metadata, we are interested in the content of that object. Again, I use the API key. The key is still valid because I didn't make another call with the key manager to get a new key. And I got 200 response again. This time the payload is a JSON file, and if you look at this, so I've got Yahoo in there and I've got example.com in there. So there's two URLs in that category object. I am going to go in here, go into, oops, let's log into Management Center because I have timed out. We're going to look at shared objects, and in here, this is the object, and I've got Yahoo and example inside that object. This object is attached, this shared object of type category is attached to this policy down here at the bottom. I have attached it here. And in this policy, it's very simple policy. I've got one web access layer that has got two rules. Second rule allows everything, and the first rule blocks anything that is in that shared object. When you attach the shared object to the VPN policy, it spits out this code for you here. That is and it adds this as well. So this included how it got attached. When you then created that in the policy, it spits out this for you, and then this shared category object, which is what I call it the exact same name what I call the object in Management Center, you don't have to, is then here. Okay, so let's go back into our test, back into our code. So what we did next, we then posted. This endpoint is exactly the same. The only thing that changed is, of course, the method from get to post. Because we are posting, the RFC tells us that we have to tell the server what's the content type, what's the content length, what payload we accept back, and there is my token. And what I have posted is this JSON content. Now I actually have overwritten what was in it. So again, it's just Yahoo and example.com. And the response was 200 OK. And again, I get the response of the entire content back from Management Center. Well, let's make a change now. I'm going to change this to Fuba. Oh, actually, let's go with google.com. I changed that. I am going to first compare if my policy, what's on the Management Center, my proxy matches. They do not, so let's push it. Okay, so they match now. So that means that if I now go to Yahoo or example.com via my proxy, I get blocked. Let's do example.com. Indeed, I am blocked. If I go to anything else, such as bbc.co.uk, I am allowed. I am now going to go back to my API client, and I rerun my code now with a change. We have removed Yahoo, and we're going to be blocking google.com. Again, I am providing the username and password for API key manager. I got an API key, and somewhere I hit an error. Let's have a look what I did wrong. So probably my password. Yep, my password is wrong because I got 401 back, so that failed. Unauthorized, bad credentials. Let's redo that. run it again. Right, let's go up to the top. And this time I got 200 OK. New token, use that token to get all the policies. I'm interested in this one. I got the UUID. I am getting that UUID now. I got it here. There's still Yahoo and example.com there on Management Center. And here is where I am making a post. There's a change content. This time I change it to Google and example.com. I got 500 error because the object is locked by Management Center by admin. So let's make sure that that's not locked. Let me go here. That's because I'm inside the object. So let's just play it safe and I actually log out here. I go back and I rerun the code. I ran that again, this time no error. I'm not going to go all the way to the top. Here is the different content, Google and example.com. This time I got 200 OK back, and the Management Center have responded back with the same content to me, Google and example.com. If I jump back into my Management Center, I log in, I go into the shared object. Down here I can see that now this one is no longer Yahoo. It's example.com. I could have chosen to change the description as well on it with the date, the incident, the change number, anything that you want, but I didn't do that. All I changed was this. I also could have chosen to put something else into the comments here. So again, date, timestamp, who, what, when, why, but I did not do that. If we go to the editor, now if we go to policy now, and this shared object is attached to this policy, if we now compare what's on the Management Center versus what's in a policy, we're going to get a difference now. The policy on a proxy has got Yahoo, the policy in Management Center that has got the shared object attached has got Google. So if I run a quick test to google.com, I will still be allowed, because the proxy doesn't have it. Yep, I'm allowed. I install this, successfully installed. I'm going to rerun my curl, and this time I am blocked, and Yahoo should now be allowed because I removed Yahoo. And indeed, Yahoo is now allowed and was previously blocked. So there's a lot more that you could do here. Of course, you don't need to follow what I did here. You don't need to follow these steps where you get the object first and get the UUID. The UUID doesn't change. So once you know it and you store it somewhere in a database on the API client, you don't need to constantly be fetching it like I am. And you also don't need to use just one user, as I did. You could have every admin user you have could have use his own radius synced user on the Management Center to make the API calls if you wish to. They could all have different roles. The roles could be tied to different objects, as I have demonstrated here. I tied this one user to only make changes on this policy. Anything else I would get 4 or 3 access denied on. But you could be very granular, of course, and you could have different users in different roles that would get access to different object that they can then manage via API. And that concludes the demo. Thank you.